This is Møller Nielsen from Java Code Geeks, and I'm going to teach you how to write clean, efficient code using SQLite. SQLite is installed on all of our mobile devices, so it is one of the most used databases ever. If you're interested in hearing about how to use SQLite, then this video is something for you. Complementary to this video, there will be related articles in the description below. Feel free to visit javacodegeeks.com, where we have more Java-related stuff. And also please take the time to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we have a lot of stuff coming up. Now, without any further ado, let's get started. So, what is SQLite? It is actually the most used database that we all use, because we have it all on our mobile phones. And this doesn't matter whether you have a iOS or an Android phone, you will have SQLite installed on that phone. And that is also why it's used a lot for apps. So if you're an app developer and you need some place to store data, then you can create a local SQLite database. And what then happens is that then a file will be created, and all of your data, all of your information will be stored in that one file. If you are using transactions, then an extra file is used where those transaction statements will be placed and the changes will be placed until you commit your transaction. You can have different sources to write to the same file, but if you do that, then you need to keep the transactions. You need to keep the time that you have the file open as low as possible. So that means you need to keep your transactions small. If your transactions are too large and your SQL operations take too long time, then you will get a database locked error for the other source that wants to write to the same file. Just keep that in mind. The default timeout is 30 seconds when you establish a database connection to your file. Then and you cannot execute that SQL within 30 seconds, then you will get the database locked error. And the reason why I'm mentioning this database error locked already now is that because at some point you will probably get that error. This also means that if you connect a CLI tool to your file, to your database, then you actually lock that file. And then if you have a backend that tries to write to the same file, then that backend will actually get the database file is locked. So only use the CLI for debugging purposes. And now let us look at how do we get this SQLite. You do not need to install anything on your computer except for the JDBC driver. If you have the JDBC driver for SQLite, then you can use that, and all the logic for storing that data is actually placed in the JDBC driver. If you want the CLI locally, then it is very easy and available. You can just download it from this page right here, sqlite.org/download.html. And I've actually cheated a bit. I've already downloaded the CLI for this demonstration that I'm about to give you right here. And if you're using Linux, I'm using Windows with WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. That means that whenever I go to my terminal, then I can actually access an Ubuntu instance. So that means that I can actually install SQLite for Linux on my machine just by downloading the zip file and then extract the content of the zip file. And that is exactly what I've done. Before I show you that, then I will show you some other alternatives, because if you do not want to pollute your own computer with CLI tools from different databases, then you can there's actually a very good Docker image right here that you can use if you just want to get acquainted with SQLite, if you just want to try it out, but you don't want to download the CLI tools locally on your own machine, then you can just use this image right here, which is located on Docker Hub for free, and it's called Kindness. And it is quite straightforward. You can pull it by running the Docker pull command right there, and then you can also run it like this, and then you will get an SQL terminal as it says right here. If you don't write anything, then you will just use a in-memory database But you can also, or you can open up a file, and then that file, inside that file, that is where your data will then be placed. Of course, when you're dealing with Docker, you always need to volume map out the file that you want to, and the files that you want to live when your container is being stopped. So just bear that in mind. But you can try out this Docker image right here if you want to. Then there's another tool that you can consider using, and that is the adminer. Then you will get a web interface that will help you. Also, that will also give you some syntax help right there. That is the adminer is very good with MySQL databases, with Postgres databases, and also with SQLite databases. So if you don't have any other clients and you don't want to use the official client terminal, and you want to get some more help, maybe you want to have a nice UI, then you can use that adminer right there. But and there's also a web page right here at adminer.org. Then you can read a bit more about this UI, web UI for accessing databases. You can also do as I do, and then use IntelliJ. I'm using IntelliJ, and I'm using the built-in database viewer in there, and and it is quite easy. It's quite straightforward, and I'll just show you how that works. I've started up IntelliJ, and I'm using the ultimate version, but you can also use, there's also a community edition that you can use. I've already created a new project by pressing File, New Project, and because I'm a Java developer, then I just chose per default Spring Initializer. I chose Gradle right here, and then I gave it a good name up here, right here. And then I chose Java 17 because that's the one I'm running right now. And then I press Next, and then I just chose my Spring modules right here, like Spring Web and also Lombok. Lombok. Right there. And I ticked off Lombok, and I also added Spring Data. Unfortunately, there's no Spring Data JP. There's no SQLite support out of the box from Spring right now. So you need to know which JDBC driver to download if you want to create a Spring application against SQLite. Then I press Finish right here. I'm going to press Cancel because I've already done this. And then under View right here, and then Tool window right here, then you can actually find something called Database right there. And that is the view that I've opened right here in the right side. And then I can press New Data Source right here. And since I've already played around with the fiddle with the SQLite before I started this video, before I started the recording, then this will be placed under Recent. You will probably see it under S right down here to begin with. But that doesn't matter. You will just choose it, of course. And then to begin with, you will not have the driver installed. So that means that you will get a yellow text in the bottom, just above where it says Test Connection. You just press download the JDBC driver, and then IntelliJ will actually download that driver for you. Then you give this data source a good name, some good name right here. We can call this for space stuff like this. And then you need to choose a file. The file needs to exist, so that means you need to create this file, before you actually choose the file from the file input field right here. And it's quite easy. You just use Notepad to do that. I'll just go to. I've created a SQLite folder under my home folder on my Windows machine right here. So I will just. I'll just take a terminal somewhere. I'll just find my terminal right here. And then I'll go to my SQLite folder. Then I'll write Notepad, space stuff, like this. And you can name it whatever you want to, but I would actually recommend you to name it .SQLite in the end, so people can actually see that this is a SQLite file. And then Notepad asks, do you want to create a file? Yes, I want to create a file. I do not want to place any content inside it. I just want to have the file. And as we can see right now, space stuff.SQLite has a length of 0, but it exists, and that is the most important thing. So let us go back to IntelliJ right here, and now I will find my file. I'll find my file. and I will find it in my home directory. The users, my name, and then SQLite, which I have right here. I only have one file, but I just created this other file right here. It is right there. Let us just write it manually. So I'll write space stuff, like this. I'll press OK. And then, of course, the URL should also change down here. Oh, it actually says Mike's file again right there. For some reason, it is not updating. Yeah, that came. So space stuff, SQLite. So it was just a bit slow with the updating of the file structure. Space stuff. So now the URL is actually correct right there. Then I can press test connection in the bottom. Then it says yes, SQLite, and it also gives me the version 3.34, which is the current version. And it could ping the file, and it was actually quite fast, 19 milliseconds. And you might already think now, okay, it only uses one file. Is that is that fast and is that efficient? And the quick answer to that is yes. There's actually applications that uses several terabytes of data inside in SQLite database that actually performs quite well. So of course it is a good idea, and it kind of also scales. But of course, if you are creating a social media application, then you probably want to use a NoSQL database, and we have created other videos about that at Java Code Geeks that you can dig into if you want to. But for most use cases, it is actually excellent, and it is especially for app development. Then this SQLite database is just awesome because it is already there. We don't need to. We can just assume that it's already there. Yeah. So here we are. Now we have a connection for our space stuff database right there. And to begin with, that is actually that we only have the master table right here, which is a default table that is being created for us. Now, if I wanted to create a new table, of course, I could look up the syntax on SQLite's homepage, or I could also just right-click and then I can say new table right here. And as you can see in the bottom of this window right here, it is really, really good for especially when you want to learn about SQLite and maybe SQL in general, because then you can see which SQL is being executed in the bottom of this window right here. I'll create a table named spaceship like this. And to begin with, we will make our table non-relational. That means that we will not have any relations inside our table. Later on, we will add another table like captain. But for now, we will actually have captain as just the name of the captain. So first of all, we need to create an ID. That is always a good thing to have an ID. So you have something unique on your table, so you can always get and refer to each row. It's a primary key, auto incremented. Just be mindful right here. If you only choose int, then you will get an error that says that the type needs to be an integer if you want this to be a primary key, and if you want to auto increment the value inside this in this column right here, you cannot choose int. You need to choose integer. Just so you know that. And then we have the second column that could be the name of the captain. Captain name like this, and this is a type text. Because it's just the name of the captain. Then we can have a third column, which could be the destination. And again, this could be text. And we can also create a fourth column that could be fuel percentage left. And that could be an int like this. So it's just a whole number between 0 and 100%. And let us look at the SQL in the bottom right here. We can see it wants to create a create table spaceship, and then we have all of the fields mentioned right here, the ID, and there's a primary key on top of that. That we have a captain name, we have a destination, we have a fuel right there. We have fuel percentage right there. Let us execute that. It looks good. So now we have a table right here named spaceship. And we can see we have 4 columns and we have 1 key, which is the spaceship primary key. Okay, let us now insert some data inside this table right here. I can just double click on the table, and then we can add a new row, add row, and then we can choose a captain name. That could be Mike. Destination, that could be Mars. Fuel percentage, that could be, let's say that is half full. And then control enter when we're done. Now we actually have 1 row inside of our table. And as you can see right now, the ID was actually filled out. The first value the ID got was 1. And of course, if I'm creating another row, and this captain could be Susan, the destination could be the moon, fuel percentage could be 75%, enter, and then control enter to execute the SQL right there. And now we actually have 2 rows inside of our table. Now let us try to create. Now we want to do we want to do stuff a bit more manually right now, because actually we can sort our data, as you can see right here, by just clicking on the header of this table. We get a lot of help when we're using IntelliJ. But now we want a query. We want a query view so we can actually write our own queries. So let us do that. We right click, and then we need to choose the. Then we need to choose that. I think I need to right click up here. Jump to query console, Control Shift F10 right there. And then I say new query console. And here I can then write my SQL as I want to, and I get a lot of code completion right here. So if I start writing select, then I can just write select like that. Star means all columns, all fields. From, yes, and then spaceship like that, and then end the command with a semicolon, and then press Control Enter for executing this SQL right here. And as you can see right here, I got Mike out, I got Susan out, and I got everything out. So that's because I used the star. I did not name the columns that I wanted, I just pressed star. Another thing, if I want to give a filter, if I want to filter something, then I can use where, and I can say captain name, like, and then we can say percentage. Maybe I should just start with an M. Then we're happy. Then I will write something like this. And now I want to get Mike out because the captain name starts with M for Mike, and not with Susan. So Susan will be filtered out like this. Instead of filters, instead of with the where clause, then we could also let's just run this. Let's just run this again. This is SQL again. So now we have both of our spaceships again. Now, if we want to sort the table, then we can use the order by. Then we can just choose the column that we want to order our data by. We can say fuel, and we can also say it's descending, because then then we will get the spaceship with the highest fuel percentage to be in the top. So right now, Susan, the spaceship where Susan is the captain, is in the top. So that's quite cool. This is quite standard. If you're used to an SQL database, then all of these SQLs that we have been running right now, those will actually seem familiar to you. So what will we do now? Now we will delete all of our data. Delete from, and then spaceship. Usually you should always have a where clause right here when you delete stuff, because right now I'm going to delete all of the data, and you can actually see that IntelliJ actually warns me, do you really want to do that? Yes, I really want to do that. So I press execute right there. Because the reason why I deleted all the data is because now I want to create some relations. I want to have a new table named captain, and I want to have a relation from my spaceship table to my captain table. So let me just create a new table right here, new table, and we will name this table captain like this. Again, we will give it an ID. We will say this should be an integer. We will say this should be auto-incremented. We will also say this should be the primary key. Now we'll just write name, and this is text like this. And we will also have an experience column right here, which will be int. This will be a number between 0 and 10. Execute. Let us get that table. So now we have an extra table right there. So inside our spaceship table, that should no longer now have a or spaceship table should not be changed, because we don't want to have the captain name any longer. Now we want to have a reference. We want to have captain ID instead, and that should be an integer or an int. But since it is an integer, since the ID is an integer in the captain table, then of course the reference should also have the same type. In this situation right here, an int. So we will run this code inside. Then we will get this error that the spaceship table already exists. That is okay, because I tried to create a new table that already existed right there. But I can also choose to modify. One solution would be just to delete the table and then create it again by drop the table and then spaceship. Another solution is to right-click on the tables room in Telgame, choose modify table, and now I should be able to change this type right here to integer, and then I will say that this should be captain ID instead, and execute. Let us see what happens. So I will just remove that. I'll remove that. And then I'll say select star from spaceship like this. And now we can see that now we have captain ID instead. So now let us create, first let us create some captains. So I will insert into captain like this, and then I'll say values. And then because the first value is the ID, then I can, and it will auto increment, then I can just choose null, and then I will choose name. And that is, the name could be, we could say Mike again, Mike, and experience could be, maybe I'm 6 in experience. Then we will create that, control enter. So now that have been created, let us just see that it's actually there. Select star from captain like this, execute the SQL, and I can see, yes, I have a captain named Mike. I also want to create a captain named Susan. Maybe she's a bit more experienced, and she has 9 instead. You can also create a third one named Thomas. And now we have 3 captains. We have Mike, Susan, and Thomas, and they have different experiences. So now I want to apply one of these captains to my spaceship. That means I will insert into spaceship like this, and then values, and then we will say no, and then we will need to say the captain ID. And I know that Mike has ID 1, so I will apply Mike to the spaceship right here. Destination, there could be Mars, and the fuel percentage, that could be maybe 99% of fuel right there. Now I've inserted one row into the spaceship right here. But right now we can just see that it says captain ID 1, and that is not very user friendly. It is difficult to see who is number 1. That means that we can actually join tables inside our SQL right here. So that means I can write select star from spaceship and then also from captain like this, where spaceship.id equals to captain ID. If I run this SQL right now, let me just do so we can see the line right here. So if I run this SQL right now, I'll get all of the fields from the different tables because they have actually been combined. Where spaceship, oh, that is not, I made an error right there. Spaceship.captain ID equals to captain.id. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to join the 2 tables. And now I executed the SQL. And here you can actually see that we have the spaceship ID 1, captain ID 1, then we have the destination Mars. And then in the end, we actually get all of the fields from the captain table. So I have captain ID 1, and I have Mike right here. I have experience 6 right there. So that's pretty cool. Now we know how to create a table. We know how to insert data. We know how to join tables. We know how to delete data. Let us try to use the CLI because it is quite useful. So now we will jump to my WSL. That means that we are now in Linux world, and I've downloaded the zip file. I've extracted the zip file, which is in this folder right here. SQLite tools like this, and here we have some tools. We have some SQLite. We also have some analyzer that can help us, and then we have something called a new file that is a test database that I have been playing a bit with. We will create our own database. So I'll write SQLite 3 right here. And as you can see right now, we have now started an SQLite, and it has connected to an in-memory database. If you want a file, then we just write .open, and then we give a file name. We can write this demo like this. And now I should have this demo file that will then be edited every time I do some things. But let us just check. We can we can go to the folder where I installed this, and now we can see I have a demo file which has a size of 0. That means that there's no data in it right now. Then I can create a new table, and we can create the spaceship again if we want to. Then we can say ID that this should be an integer. We can say we want. I'm not going to add all of that primary key stuff, but let us just say spaceship, and then we can say integer, and we can say destination, and fuel. So I'll leave out the caption this time. So fuel percentage, this could be an integer like this, and I'll also like to make the ID an integer, because if I want to make it a primary key, then it needs to be an integer. So enter. And how do I now see all of my tables? That's a good question. We can get the help from the SQLite by pressing dot and then help. Every time we write dot and then something, then it is something that is built into the CLI. And if we go up here, then we can actually see that is something named tables right here. Let us try out that command, .tables. And here I can see now I actually have a table named spaceship. Let me just clear the console. Oh, that was actually not possible right there. So, yes. Let us now try to start. Okay, let us actually see the size of the file. I'll just show that. If I go right here, then we can actually see that now the size of this file is actually 8 kilobytes. Now I want to start a transaction, and that is actually quite easy. You just write begin transaction like this. So now we have begun a transaction, and then I can insert some data. And the data will not be inserted before we run a commit or a rollback. If there's any error that we meet while we are doing all of these things inside our transaction, then we can always write rollback in the end, and then we will roll back to the initial point in the database. So I'll write inserts into and then spaceship like this, values, ID, that could be 1, the destination could be mass, the fuel percentage, that could be 88% like this. So that was one command. And then let's just see what actually happens to our file while we do that. We can see now we actually got a journal file. The journal file contains all the differences that we are trying to add. And this file will disappear whenever we are committing our database, or if we are creating a rollback, then the journal file will also disappear. So now let us create one more spaceship. This could be number 2, and this spaceship could go to Jupiter. Jupiter needs a little bit more fuel, so we'll say 98 instead. Okay, and now let us try to run commit. Before we run commit, let us just see the size of our demo journal. It actually has the same size. The size did not increase, but now let us try to commit, and then let us see what happens. Commit. Let's try to see what happened now. The journal file disappeared. And the demo file, that means that all of the data actually ended up inside the demo file. The reason why the file size actually did not increase, that is because 2 rows does not take up that much space. What takes up space inside this database is actually definitions. Of course, the rows will also, if you add millions of rows, of course, you can see the file increase. But if you just add 2 rows, it's not always that you can see the file increase, because it actually disappears when you compare it to all of the definitions of your tables and of your columns. That is actually what takes the data. So now we have actually tried to run a transaction. Now let us also try to select, and you can see there's actually code completion. Every time I press tab, then I can get some help. Select star from like this, and then we say select from spaceship like this, and now I actually get my data in the CLI, Mars, Jupiter, etc., etc. That's actually it. So if you want to try the Docker version instead, if you don't want the client installed on your own machine, then you can run this command right here. I can also run it so you can see that it actually works. Just right. I'll just clear the screen right here because I've already run it. I've made this as a shell script. I like to have my commands that I run as shell scripts because then I can rerun them later on and I can also change them. So I have this shell script called SQLite.sh right here, and what I'm doing right here is that I'm calling this command right here, docker run --rm for remove. That means that it will be removed as soon as the container has stopped. Then the container will actually be deleted. If not, then the container will actually sit there and pollute and take up space from your system. -it means interactive and terminal. This means that I will actually have a terminal attached to my Docker instance, my Docker container. So let us just run SQLite right here. And it actually started up just like we saw before. And this was the Docker image that I was talking about. And of course, we can also create, we can open something right here, myfile.sqlite. And the reason why it cannot do that is because that file does not exist yet. So we should, when we're inside the Docker container, we need to create the file first. That is just something to be aware of. So, and that has something to do with the rights for this Docker image right here. Yeah, these were the options. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. Bye.